Welcome everybody to Fizbin Face, where we talk about how to play Fizbin. Wait. No. Welcome everybody to Trek in Time, where we talk about Star Trek in time. In this episode, we're going to be talking about a piece of the action. That's right. We're talking about the original series, originally broadcast on January 12th, 1968, episode number 49 in shooting order, 46th in broadcast order, the 17th of the second season. Welcome everybody to Trek in Time, where we're watching every episode of Star Trek in chronological stardate order. We're also looking at how the world was at the time of original broadcast, which means we're talking about January of 1968, as well as whether a Fizbin is a game worthy of learning the rules. And who are we? I'm Sean Farrell. I'm a writer. I write some sci-fi. I write some stuff for kids. And with me, as always, is my brother Matt. He's the guru and inquisitor behind Undecided with Matt Farrell, which takes a look at emerging tech and its impact on our lives. And Matt, how are you today?
I'm doing well. I will say we skipped a week because I was traveling, you were traveling, and I'm lagging behind, but I just watched another episode of Andor, Sean. I'm getting so close to the end of the season. This show is one of the best TV shows ever made. It's Star Wars, not Star Wars, doesn't matter. It is such a good show. It is incredible.
I am halfway through the second season.
But you and I need to talk about it on our Out of Time podcast.
Yes, which is the spin-off show from this. For anybody who isn't aware, we have, for direct supporters, we have a spin-off show, which is Out of Time. We talk about other things other than just Trek. And so, let's do an episode of that soon so that we can talk about Andor. Before we get into our discussion about this newest episode, a piece of the action, we always like to visit the mailbag and see what you've had to say about our previous episode. So we're dipping back 2 weeks. Matt, what did you find for us this time?
So there were a couple of conversations around, you and I had talked about, because I've brought it up numerous times, the inconsistency of the original series.
Yes.
And how some episodes are just like, wow, lowest common denominator, women that are barely wearing clothes and they look like they're Mylar balloons, all that kind of stuff. Got some people commenting on that. Mark Lovelace wrote in saying, I think Matt hit it on the head. If you're a shapely female wearing a Mylar balloon, the more lowbrow audience you will tend to attract. This was the 60s, and showing skin anywhere, television, movies, in public, was the latest hippie-influenced trend. No wonder it impacted ratings. I mean, come on, those short skirt female crew member uniforms aren't exactly ideal for what is basically a military crew person to wear. Yeah. That said, my God, this episode, which was Immunity Syndrome, was really good in my book. I forgot how good it was from a pure sci-fi standpoint.
Yeah.
Which, yes, 100%. And then Baba Rudra wrote on the same basic topic, when the top-rated shows at the time were sitcoms and variety shows, it's not surprising that most of the headiness was lost. I do wonder how much of the brilliance was on purpose, how much was by mistake, and how much is only brilliance in hindsight. And I thought that was fantastic, because I think some of the brilliance is in hindsight. Like,
yeah,
100%.
I think we're going to dip into that idea as we talk about this episode in particular, because there's some details about the making of this episode that I think really shine a light on that very concept. So thank you, Baba Rudra. That's a great comment.
Yeah. We talked about how Lieutenant Kyle was strangely changing roles and different uniforms and stuff like that.
Combing his hair differently.
Yes. Wayouts123 wrote, okay, spitballing deep into left field. What if Lieutenant Kyle got a battlefield promotion and did not go through the academy? Perhaps he's doing his department rotation like Uhura did in season 1 of Strange New Worlds. And I hadn't thought about that. What if he is doing a department rotation?
Right. They are.
Could explain it away. There's no way they thought about that in the 1960s.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yeah. And then as far as wrong answers only, I'm mixing things up. Mark Lovelace did have a really good one. Thank you, Mark. But AJ Chan also had a good one. So here's AJ Chan's. Instead of a piece of the action, it's a pizza the action. Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and Ensign Redshirt beam down to a planet with a hospitable people who bring them to a feast of the best Italian food the crew has ever had. Spock doesn't know how to eat pasta, so gets marinara sauce on his uniform. McCoy makes fun of him, but then he gets sauce on his uniform too. Kirk was fine because his shirt was off. The beautiful woman, who's their tour guide, insists that her people are not from Earth, despite the similarities to Earth's Italy. After Spock and Bones beam back up to the ship to clean their clothes, Kirk and Redshirt are given a tour of the Grand Pizza Oven, which is amazing. Then they're given the official pizza, which is so delicious that Redshirt tries to steal the recipe from the Grand Pizza Oven, but is struck dead by a bolt of lightning. Kirk tried to apologize, but the godlike entity in the Grand Pizza Oven will only accept a new recipe as payback. Spock, Bones, Scotty, Sulu, and Uhura scramble to identify a suitable recipe that Kirk can make on the planet, and they eventually settle on a Swahili dish that Uhura knows by heart. Kirk succeeds in making the recipe and dines with the people of the planet once again. Spock and Bones are allowed to beam back down, and then when it's time to go, Kirk tried to put his shirt back on, but now it doesn't fit. He says that must have shrunk due to the radiation from the planet's rings. Spock raises an eyebrow. Fascinating.
Excellent work. Excellent work, AJ. That's terrific. Thank you for that. Well, that noise you hear in the background and those lights flashing, that's not a pizza oven. Nope, it's the read alert. It's time for Matt to tackle the Wikipedia description. Good luck, Matt.
Right. The Enterprise visits a planet with a violent culture based on America's 1920s Prohibition era. After receiving a 100-year late report from an old starship, Kirk, Bones, and Spock decide to beam down to the Iosian? Iosian?
Uh-huh.
Okay. To the Iosian planet. It looks like an L. To the Iosian planet to learn about their way of life, and are surprised that the entire society is based on 1920s era Chicago mob culture. Realizing that the Enterprise must help rectify the situation, Kirk decides to collect all the bosses in one place and form a syndicate, but runs into trouble with the two biggest bosses, Bella and Krakow. Kirk captures Bella and transports Krakow to the Enterprise before tricking the rest of the bosses into gathering together. Using Starfleet Command as the oversight body, Kirk forms the syndicate to be headed by Bala and Krakow as his lieutenant. Shouldn't it be as his lieutenants? Kirk hopes that they can teach a new style of living to these people under the surveillance of the Federation. This is a weird... That's not completely accurate.
No, that's fairly accurate. He does say Kirk says, I don't want to be the head of the syndicate. He does say Bella should be, and Krakow would be his lieutenant. So that's accurate. And
okay.
Yeah, but the surveillance of the Federation aspect is a little loosey-goosey. It's not fully presented in the episode in a way that makes a lot of sense.
That's why I paused. I was like, surveillance of the what? No.
In fact, they hint at, well, we'll be back in 100 years. Almost like, well, it took you 100 years to get to this state, so we'll be back in 100 years and see how you're doing then. Which would, of course, be within the Next Generation era. So, I'll get around to that. Directed by James Comack, story by David Harmon, teleplay by David Harmon and Gene L. Kuhn. Interestingly enough, story by, teleplay by, none of it refers to Gene Roddenberry. President Capone was a note that Roddenberry made on the front page of the Star Trek Story Bible at the very beginning of putting it together. So this idea started with Roddenberry and is a very early idea of Roddenberry's. So the idea of a planet run by mobsters was planted then. And then it went through multiple rewrites with multiple writers until finally this was the final draft. Gene L. Kuhn picked up on the tone shift in The Trouble with Tribbles and figured we need more lighthearted episodes like that. So this is a byproduct of both an older idea by Roddenberry and Gene Kuhn saying we need to lean more heavily into comedic, family-friendly fare, as opposed to, like last week's episode, Immunity Syndrome, which this episode is actually broadcast next to. So the unevenness that you were talking about is on full display here. We went from what is effectively a very hard sci-fi concept into this. We'll get into this a little bit more. Originally broadcast on January 12th, 1968. Guest appearances include Anthony Caruso as Bella Oxmix, Vic Tayback as Jojo Krakow, and people may remember Vic Tayback's major role in television was the 1970s on the show Alice, where he played the chef. Lee Delano as Kalo, John Harmon as Teppo. Apparently they wanted to name everybody after a Marx brother. Sheldon Collins as Tough Kid, in what is arguably, for me, the only great scene of the show. The Tough Kid is played by Sheldon Collins, who would go on, Matt, to become a dentist. So eventually he gives up his attempts to become a successful child actor. He was in a couple of things here and there, and he was in a couple of movies, but he eventually retires from acting and went to school and became a dentist. Diane Thorne as first girl, Sharon Hillier as second girl, Buddy Garion as Hood, and back to the Marx Brothers again, Stephen Marlowe as Zabo. At the time of broadcast, January 12th, 1968, good news for Sean, everybody. Celebrate with me. Sean didn't have to change much of the notes. That's right, the number one song, Still Hello Goodbye by the Beatles. Matt, take it away. Great as always. And the number one movie, yes, you guessed it, Matt, The Valley of the Dolls. People were still lining up to see people get addicted to barbiturates. And on television, we've looked at a number of different shows trying to compare various programs that were being broadcast against the Nielsen ratings of Star Trek, which was getting at about 11.5 in its second season. But this week, I wanted to visit something different. And by different, I meant weird. And by weird, I mean a show that I have never heard of, but I wish I had. I'm talking about Way Out. It's a 1961 American horror, fantasy, and science fiction television anthology series in the vein of Twilight Zone or The Outer Limits, hosted by writer Roald Dahl.
What?
Yes.
I've never heard of this.
The macabre black and white 25-minute shows were introduced by Dahl, his face projected in a disconcerting Hall of Mirrors effect, dryly delivering a brief introductory monologue expounding on such unusual subjects as undertakers or frogs or murdering a romantic rival with ground tiger's whiskers. The show, notes that I could find, Dahl originally agreed to only do a handful of episodes at the beginning, and he was going to be paid $450 per introduction.
By today's money, that's like, okay,
Yes.
That's not that much for
Yes,
somebody like him.
It's not that much money by today's standards. Neither is this. The reason he was willing to do it at all is because he needed to raise money to take care of medical bills for his son. Can you imagine doing 4 or 5 introductions at $450 a pop in order to pay for medical bills? By today's dollars, the medical bills would be much greater.
Oh, yeah.
The payment for being on the television show would be much greater. Like the numbers just boggle my mind. But after doing a few of them, he got into it. And then he was like, I'll do more of these. I'll just continue to be the host. So he became the regular host of the show. The very first episode was a television production of one of his short stories that had been in a collection that he had published. But after that, they were just shows that were written by other people. So it was similar to The Twilight Zone or The Outer Limits. This is a program I did not know about. I have never seen. If anybody has any experience with this show, jump into the comments. Let us know what you think about it, because I'm very, very curious about a show hosted by Roald Dahl, one of my favorite writers.
Yeah.
Just sounds like really alternate world details. And in the news on this day, January 12th, 1968, well, we're seeing a bunch of headlines continuing to harken back to Vietnam, ongoing stuff around investigations in New York City regarding corruption in the city, And most telling, though, as far as the more things change, the more they stay the same. A couple of articles about Israel having seized areas of old Jerusalem and the ongoing strife there in the Middle East. Things don't change. Kind of a
Definitely
haunting
not.
moment for us as we record this.
Yes.
And these tensions continue to this day. So, Matt, I think last week
Sean.
I started off the conversation. But I'd like to jump in and continue the trend of me starting the conversation just to say the uneven nature of these programs makes for difficulty in watching when you see what they can do when they lean on hard sci-fi. And then you see, and this goes back to Baba Ruger's comment, the brilliance being in hindsight. I don't think at the time of original broadcast, they knew where to lean.
Nope.
I think that they had inconsistency in the ratings. If you look at the ratings numbers, it's very hard to judge what the audience was positively responding to. There are some hard sci-fi episodes that don't do great. There are some that do moderately well. There are some comedic episodes that don't do great. There are some that do moderately well. I feel like this show, in its second season, having lost the backing of Lucille Ball because Desilu Studios had been purchased at this point, they were operating at half the budget they had in their first season. They had been moved to Friday nights, which is the death slot for anything that's for a more mature audience, because on Friday nights, the more mature audience goes out. So they are leaning heavily into, we got to be family friendly. We got to be funny. We got to be for the whole family that's at home, not for the younger audience, the youthful adult audience that might be into more hard sci-fi stuff. So they're trying a lot of different stuff. You end up with an uneven quality with an episode like this that is sandwiched between Gamesters of Triskelion and Immunity Syndrome. Just imagine your viewing experience. Gamesters of Triskelion, light sci-fi, leaning into some sex appeal of the mylar balloon wearing woman. Kirk making out with her changes her entire worldview, and combat sequences that look both overly long and under choreographed, so that it's this kind of like there's no real sense of danger in them. It comes across very much like pantomime. Like you watch an episode like Amok Time, and I feel like in Amok Time, it really does look like Spock is going to kill Kirk.
Yep.
And you watch Gamesters of Triskelion and you feel like, okay, these guys had an afternoon to practice this. You follow that with this episode, which is a confusing episode for me, and I'll get to why in a moment. And then the following week, you get Immunity Syndrome, hard sci-fi, finding an amoeba in space. From a viewer perspective, I feel like it would have been a very challenging time to say, I like this show when you're seeing that level of inconsistency. How did you, I'll say all of that, and then now I'll push it to you and ask you about this episode in particular. Where did you land on it? What did you think about this one?
The best way to put it, Sean, is you use the word confused. That was me watching this episode, because there were moments where I was like, that's kind of charming, or that's kind of funny. But overall, I was like, wow, this is horrible. This is so bad. And when you said it was an original idea written by like President Capone by Roddenberry, and they went through many revisions, my first thought, Sean, is they should have gone through like a dozen more, because this was not the one to execute on. And then my other thought that came to me as I was watching it, of course, this is 2025, Matt, reflecting on this, there are episodes just like this all over The Next Generation.
Yeah.
And they work so well. And one of the reasons they work is the stupidity of the plot setup is almost always they're on the holodeck.
Yeah.
And something's gone wrong.
Yeah.
And here, we're on a planet that for some ungodknown reason, just a stupid book made them all go, you know what? We're going to mimic mob bosses. And they explained it away by going, these people are highly impressionable. And that was supposed to be the thing that makes you go, yeah, I buy this. It was so stupid. People walking around with guns everywhere. And this is family friendly of people getting gunned down on streets. It's like, this is not family friendly. This is not like, it's so confused. This episode is so confused that as a viewer, I'm like, I don't know if I should be liking this or not. I don't know if this is good or not. This is just, it's all over the map. So for me, Sean, this was another one of those episodes that gets me angry, that makes me go to basically say, I think Gene Roddenberry is a little bit of a hack. And it's like watching the first couple seasons of Next Generation. For me, it reinforces my opinion of he's a bit of a hack. He doesn't know how to do good television. And he doesn't know how to lead a team, a creative team, to create a consistent delivery of a show every single week. Granted, this is 2025, Matt, reflecting on a show from the 60s. So I got to cut it some slack because at the time, yada, yada, yada. But at the same time, I think we hold Roddenberry up on a pedestal because he was the guy who created Star Trek. He deserves the accolades for that.
Yes.
But he didn't make it what we fell in love with. He didn't. It was the people around him that made Star Trek great. Yeah. And so, I don't know.
I keep going back to a comment we had from weeks ago about DC Fontana being responsible for what Vulcans are. I feel like we're charging through these episodes and rediscovering that on a weekly basis of, the Roddenberry-ness of it is similar to the George Lucas-ness of it. I think that there's a similarity there in that hats off to Roddenberry for creating Star Trek, hats off to George Lucas for creating Star Wars. But there are lots of places where you can see that Roddenberry's hands don't leave good marks. And the same goes for Lucas, that sometimes you get saved by the actors that were cast or the editing choices that were made or any number of other things around the production that allows people to hold on to a thing that they truly love. And I think that's on display here. I talked about the unevenness of the show and the ratings that were some episodes that you'd think were classics because we recall them so fondly not doing well and vice versa. Trouble with Tribbles got an 8.8 in the Nielsen's. Gamesters of Triskelion got a 10.9.
Yeah.
A Piece of the Action got a 9.9 and Immunity Syndrome got a 9.4. So of all of those, the Trouble with Tribbles, the one that Gene Kuhn was just like, we got to do more like that, isn't the best rated of the bunch. No. That reads to me like they were making these shows and making guesses about how they would do without having the evidence. They weren't filming A Piece of the Action after broadcast of the Trouble with Tribbles. They were broadcast 3 weeks apart. So this is a case of they were making assumptions of like, this tone is probably going to be good. This is probably what the viewers are like, but they're all over the place.
But that's
Gamesters of Triskelion is the highest rated of the three I mentioned.
But that's the problem though. It's like Roddenberry is the showrunner. He's the creator. He's the one that should be creating the vision and keeping everybody on track. And the fact that you had Kuhn doing his own thing and this writer kind of doing their own thing, we're getting this like knee-jerk back and forth in quality and tone, and it's whipping us all over the place, and you're splitting your audience. Yeah. So there's going to be people that like the Kuhn approach, and there's going to be other people that like this other approach. And it's like the fact that he was not reining things in and keeping things on a more consistent track, to me, is where Roddenberry just completely falls short in running the show.
For me, the things that stand out about this episode, like you already mentioned, the setup is like, if only this had been, we accidentally got trapped in the holodeck.
Yep.
You could have all sorts of very interesting, like, then you get the captain, like the idea that Picard would be like, I got to become the mob boss.
Mm-hmm.
I got to rally all these gangs, but I got to do it without costing anybody's lives, because if it turns into a shooting war and one of us who's trapped in here ends up getting killed, then the blood is on my hands. So you end up with, you can have the fun of like, you got your mob boss, you got your mob mall, you got like all of the heavies and the thugs and all of that stuff. And you could play around with it. And they do that. They have, what's the character that Picard plays, the Private Eye? They do that kind of story time and again with him. But here we have the leap of logic of there's an entire planet that will quickly base itself around any random item that is put in front of them. And yet at the same time, they're described as highly intelligent, but they're also stagnant. They have had 100 years to get to the 1920s level technology, but they want new heaters that can do more. Well, if they were able to go from nothing to having mob style 1920s Chicago, why would their progress have halted there? They clearly have aspirations to new technology and have the ability to make stuff. Wouldn't they have on their own started pushing themselves toward greater and greater technological heights? Why is it this parroting of a set that is used in any number of TV shows just so that you can say, well, it's a cost-saving measure, clearly. So here we have the cost-saving measure of every costume, every set, every Tommy gun. All of that is stuff that would have been on the lot, no expense. So, all right, so you're going to say, like, we're going to do this. You're doing it. Once you're doing it, the production is really well done. And that for me becomes a part of the weirdness of this episode. I'm watching it and I'm like, I don't like this, but it is very well done. It is well acted. I feel like this is another example of Shatner saying, like, finally I get to stretch some comedic muscles. The Fizbin scene. Yeah. The Fizbin scene is great.
Yes.
Like he's making up a game to confuse the guy, and it is legitimately funny. And like, oh, good for you. You got a splort. Like all of that stuff is funny. The scene that stands out for me is the one with the tough kid who's just like, you want to get in there? I want a percentage. And then goes up and is doing his whole, I'm going to attack these mob guys. And their response is, oh, ain't he cute? And then, oh, daddy, daddy, daddy. And I'm like, this is funny. This is charming. This is like, son, what did they do to you? Like running up there and then getting their way into the hideout. I'm like, it's well rendered, but what it's like a beautiful painting of an ugly scene. It doesn't feel like this was where you put that effort. This is what you did it on. Gamesters of Triskelion felt like nobody bought in. I remember that in our conversation when we talked about that episode, we were like, this feels like nobody gave a crap. This one, it feels like they gave a crap. And I'm like, why? Like, why this one? Is it just for the opportunities of humor? And I feel like that may be it. I feel like maybe the actors feel like it's like this for them was a little more fun to do. And I'm like, I'm glad they had fun, but the results for me are a well-made bad episode and just not.
I would call it charming. There's like there's aspects of this episode that are super charming, and you just hit on a bunch of them. Like that kid was funny. Like as he's about to go do it, they're like, "What are you going to do?" And he goes, "Oh, you'll know." And he goes up there and does that stuff. And I was like, "It's funny. It's charming. The whole card scene is great." Spock is like nerve pinching people at a rate we've never seen.
Yeah.
And then somebody even comments on it during the episode. And I was like, that's fantastic. It's like, he's done it 3 times. And the 3rd time they're like, make a comment about it. And I was like, that's like chef's kiss. That's really funny. And Bones screwing up again. It's just like, there's a lot of stuff that happens in this that's charming. It's fun to see these characters that know each other so well and reacting with each other. But at the same time, like you just said, it's an ugly scene that we're watching them paint well. And it's like, I don't want this. Stop.
A couple of notes about the show. According to the production report for the Star Trek Enterprise episode, The Communicator, you remember that episode, Matt? That's one where a communicator gets left behind by Reed and they have to go about going to get it back. Inspired by this idea. Like McCoy is like, oh, I think I left it behind. Like the idea that, okay, in that situation, you don't fly away. And this episode, strangely, is the only episode of Star Trek from the original series to end in a freeze frame, which adds to the sitcomness of it.
Yes.
Because it ends with a like what are we watching? Like, okay, the conceit of, oh, this group of people will take anything put in front of them and build their entire culture around it. One of the big conceits of this episode that I found myself just laughing at again and again every time I thought about it was, why would that book have gone into space in the first place?
Exactly.
Like,
why would they have
they
taken that
mentioned
down?
the Horizon was the ship that came here, and it left behind this book, and it's like it left behind that book. Like
that's my problem with this entire episode. I love the way you described it as it's an ugly painting. It's an ugly scene. It's like there is zero logic, none, to anything that has to do with the setup of the show. But the things that happen with those awful logic plot points are good. So it's like, okay, you got these two stupid connections that make no freaking sense. But what they do to connect them is like, hey, that's funny. That's charming. That's clever. But that's what I was so confused watching the episode of like, do I like this or hate this? And then of course at the end, it's like, I know I hated this. This is not the show I wanted.
It feels like it's very much 1960s sitcom logic.
Yes.
Like, oh, my boss is coming over for dinner and my wife is a witch. Like, it's that.
Or Three's Company. It's like any Three's Company episode.
Yeah, the Three's Company, like you overhear through the door somebody trying to hang a shower rod and somebody saying like, you got to get it longer. And the other person saying, well, you got to get yourself lower. You're too low. And the person on the other side is staring at the camera going, "Ling," and like this falls into the same zone as that. And there are two more details that I wanted to share that are the only things that I could think would actually rectify this episode for me. This episode, which actually gets rated highly in fan polls. It has been voted both amongst the worst episodes and amongst the best episodes. So apparently, depending on who you ask and when, response is very different. But there are two details that I thought were fascinating. One is in 2020, Deadline Hollywood and IndieWire mentioned that Quentin Tarantino was making a pitch to make a Star Trek film, citing this episode as the inspiration for what he wanted to do. And he would have made it as a prequel to the original series. So what does that mean? I have no idea, but I just love the detail of that. Just imagine a Quentin Tarantino Star Trek film.
All I'm seeing is Reservoir Dogs combined with Star Trek.
Yeah.
That's all I'm seeing in my head.
Yeah. Captain of the Enterprise standing there saying it's my way or the highway. The other detail, before it was decided that the Deep Space Nine episode where they went back in time and visited the Trouble with Tribbles, before they did that, this episode was considered as a jumping off point for revisiting the original series. And it would have, they toyed with the idea of the Deep Space Nine crew visiting this planet and discovering that McCoy's having left a device behind meant that they had imitated all of Starfleet culture. And I love this. The idea was left that you could have had an episode that was talking about the Trekkie phenomenon.
Oh my
Imagine
God.
visiting a planet that is based itself around the original series, and you show up and their response is, yeah, we do this because we love it.
Yeah.
And we know it better than you. You could have had then the episode revolving around Starfleet officers being told they don't understand Starfleet by the fans of Starfleet.
That's very meta.
Very meta. Could have been very funny. However, I do love the Deep Space Nine Tribbles episode. I appreciate that they went the direction they did. But this falls firmly in the category for me of, the fandom episode that could have been, would have been a lot of fun and would have been really fixing the problem of the existence of an episode that I find so poorly conceived. Like, yeah, it would have, for me, this episode stands out as one that I remember watching it as a kid, and as a kid I enjoyed it. But
yeah,
is it good storytelling? It's well done, but is it a good story? I don't know. So we're landing in pretty firm thumbs down territory, it seems. But viewers, listeners, what do you think? Do you agree with us, or did you watch this and think you just enjoy everybody having a good time and you like the mobness of it and you like the Fizbin adventure and you like that the guy got a splort? Let us know in the comments.
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing. And that's the thing. Like, as I'm watching it, I kept thinking, I recognize it's well made. And then I read the data on the episode where it was pointed out, like, there have been polls where this gets polled as one of the top episodes. This gets polled, strangely, in a very specific way, as one of the top 3 episodes for Spock.
I could see that.
And I'm like, okay, like, how specific a poll was that? Best Spock episode. The man is in almost every episode. So how do you define what is a Spock-centered episode versus a non-Spock-focused episode? Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so as far as like Spock's performance, people think that this is a great opportunity. So you end up with, I mean, the humor of it is obvious. It's well written. It's well acted. It's weird shenanigans.
Yep.
Are we just getting old? Is that what's happening?
Kirk driving a car, Sean.
Kirk driving a car.
Spock's response driving a car. To him driving the car. It's very funny.
No matter how many times they go back to a 20th century style environment, they never figure out to look when crossing the street.
Nope.
Because in this episode, when they cross the street and the car honks at them and they barely make it across, the first thing that went through my head was double dumbass on you, which is the line from Star Trek IV when they try to cross the street and somebody yells, "Get out of the road, dumbass." And Kirk's response is double dumbass on you. And I'm like, they never figure out that these motor vehicles, which I love the idea that people in the future are not going to know what ground transportation is. Like, you're walking around San Francisco in the 24th century. There's no ground transportation at all. Is it all transporters and flying machines? There's not any like little car that like hovers above the ground. Like, none of that exists. I find myself just like, what are they saying about the future?
I want somebody to take that sound effect you just did and make a dance song out of it.
Yes, please. If you do that, provide a link in the comments, and don't forget, jump into the comments. Let us know what you thought about this episode. Let us know if you think we just missed the boat.
Yeah.
Let us know if this is one of your favorites and why. And let us know if you disliked it. We'd love to hear all opinions on this one. None of them are wrong, but some of them are just like, okay. Don't forget liking, subscribing, sharing with your friends. Those are great ways to support the podcast. They're free, they're easy. And if you want to support us directly, you can go to trekintime.show, click the join button there. Not only does it allow you to support us directly to make this show, but we will also sign you up for our spinoff program, Out of Time, that we mentioned earlier in the episode, where we talk about things that don't fit within the confines of this program. Sometimes it's other TV shows, movies, comics, whatever is crossing our paths at that moment. We hope you'll be interested in checking it out. When you are jumping into the comments, don't forget, wrong answers only. What do you think the next episode will be about? The episode? By any other name. That is not me using a phrase to introduce the name of the episode. That is the name of the episode. What is By Any Other Name about? Let us know. Wrong answers only. And thank you once again, everybody, for taking the time to watch or listen, and we'll talk to you next time.